First of all, though, let me introduce you to Tom Slater, editor at Spiked Online. A very, very, very good morning to you. We have an awful lot to talk about, and some of the biggest topics actually didn't even get to in that, some of those opening details. We're going to be talking about what's happening here, the Channel migrants who are just working illegally and delivering all our food, and everyone's turning a blind eye to it and pretending it's not happening. We'll talk about that in a moment. But in terms of the Israel-Iran ceasefire, Donald Trump post yesterday, congratulations to everyone. It's been fully agreed by and between Israel and Iran. There will be a complete and total ceasefire in approximately 6 hours from now, when Israel and Iran have wound down and completed their final missions. And he talked about this will be the end of the 12-day war. Overall, now, we know there were missiles until the point of the ceasefire. The claims of missiles since Israel claims that Iran has violated the ceasefire. Iran has denied this, even though there is clear evidence of missile strikes on Israeli cities. Goodness knows where they'd be coming from otherwise. What do you make of that announcement, that deal, if it is such a ceasefire? Is this a victory for Donald Trump's tactics in this, and indeed Israel's as well?
Well, it sounds like a cop-out, but it is almost certainly too early to say. I mean, we did have that big, bombastic, typically Trumpian announcement last night about how this ceasefire had been drawn up, that this was going to be the 12 days war, almost drawing a line under it, saying no more days, please. This is how far it's going to go. He's the
president for peace, not war, after all.
Absolutely. And it took a few hours for there to be even any noises coming from either the Iranian-Israeli side that they had signed up to it. They seem to indicate that they had. But as you say, already this morning, accusations of having broken it because of these strikes which have continued on. So it's one of those things where it would be very surprising if it entirely unravelled, but at the same time we're at that very fragile
Well, I mean,
point,
the war is supposedly, you know, the ceasefire in Lebanon, and there are still strikes on Hezbollah terror targets in the
ceasefire with Hamas as well unravelled, of course. So there's all these sorts of, you know, factors that could come into play.
Yes, indeed. Small matter of people carrying on firing their rockets. Overall, though, a lot of people, the great and the good, the BBC and Sky and all their analysis, everyone's saying, look, you know, this was a terrible thing for Donald Trump to have done. You know, he's igniting the Middle East. You can't do strikes on nuclear facilities. This will make things worse, not better. Same criticisms, far worse, of course, on Israel for taking out what they did of Iranian military capability. And yet, overall, what we've been seeing, especially when we saw Iran's retaliation, in inverted commas, when they hit some sites in Qatar, which, OK, they warned the Qatar government, they warned the US government, they deliberately missed their targets. No one was killed, no damage was really done. I mean, come on. This was a pretend attack. They were desperate for this war to end. At the end of the day, there is peace through strength. People talk about, everyone has to come to the table and you can negotiate peace and we can just talk with people. These are Islamist fundamentalist lunatics, and the only language they will understand is strength and power. Donald Trump and Israel have exerted strength and power, taken out their capability, maybe not forever for nuclear war capability, but certainly for a good long time. That is something that's a good thing, isn't it? Iran is the troublemaker in the Middle East. Good. They're now back in their box for a bit. Fingers crossed, you know, it could be a revolution, another one in Iran, and they could be ousted and a sensible government gets in. I'm not holding out, you know, for that, because it's the Middle East after all. Be careful what you wish for. But in terms of what was very likely, the prospect of Iran and the mad mullahs getting a nuclear weapon and their ongoing assaults and threats to Israel, tick, job done, I'd say.
Well, that's got to be the starting point, isn't it, of any of this? Anyone who's blasé about the prospect of this millenarian, deeply zealous Islamist regime getting its hands on a nuclear weapon really needs their heads examining. You can understand why
that's most of the commentariat in Britain.
It is incredible how blasé they're about, especially because of the fact that there was all these comparisons to Iraq and so on and so forth. This wasn't a dodgy dossier. This was the International Atomic Energy Agency who had said that they were enriching uranium north of 60%. They were clearly breaking the terms in which they'd previously signed up to, and they were clearly being very deceptive about how they were operating. Therefore, this is something that we should take an interest in.
I mean, the IEA is able to go and inspect what's going on, and now they did conclude earlier in the year that there was no evidence they were actually building building a nuclear weapon, apart from the fact they've got the rockets to put the enriched uranium bombs on. But no one enriches uranium to spending billions of dollars.
And you need, what, 3% for power?
Nuclear power. Also, you've got quite a lot of oil. Probably not If you want to have a nuclear energy capability, fill your boots. But you don't need 60% enriched uranium. And you know what you don't need to do? You don't need to do it 300 metres underground in rock underneath a mountain.
No.
I just don't think that's. I don't think that's
not
part
sinister
of
in the slightest.
I mean, we are talking about Bond villain levels of behaviour, and the useful idiots in the West are going, well, I don't think we've got any evidence of that. This is clearly a hostile attack. These people are insane. I don't want any of these people in charge of my country. Oh, look, let's talk about David Lammy, the Foreign Secretary. Let's talk about Keir Starmer. Timmy Badenoch has said Keir Starmer has no moral clarity. And we've got this issue. Friedrich Merz, the German Chancellor, I mean, he's rapidly turning into the leader of Europe. He's just come from nowhere. He's really clear. Well, yes, absolutely. You can't argue it was a bad thing to get rid of this nuclear threat. Of course the technology and the people, the know-how still exists. Of course they can still go and get it. But I just find it utterly extraordinary.
I think especially because Keir Starmer has been maintaining this line that what we need is diplomacy, that what we need to do is get round the table, condemning, provocations on both sides from even before America got involved. Because I understand there are sometimes concerns when you kind of widen the theatre of war, you bring in the global hegemon, that's potential for things to kind of spin out of control, hasn't in this instance, which is potentially to Trump's credit if all things hold together. But at the same time, he was kind of opposed to even Israel going in there. And you think Israel, we've talked about why you shouldn't allow Islamist lunatics to have a nuclear weapon. These Islamist lunatics also, if they had that nuclear weapon, it'd be pointed in one direction, towards Israel, who they've constantly said they want to wipe off the map. They see it as an abomination. It would be the fulfilment of prophecy, effectively, if they did so.
They've got a countdown clock in the main square in Tehran for when they're going to attack Israel. I don't know how many more hints they can give.
Exactly, the idea that there was no justification for it. And I think Keir Starmer, aside from the more principled points that we might make against him, he's also just ended up looking like an idiot, coming out the G7 saying Trump isn't going to get involved, and then he gets involved. Not for the first time, he looks like the kind of spare parts of
and saying we're just
affairs,
pushing for de-escalation, and then we saw a massive escalation, and the massive escalation is the reason why it would appear Iran's come to the table. Now, look, we don't know whether the ceasefire's going to hold or not, or Iran said we haven't agreed to it yet. I think that may just be a bureaucratic issue in a non-functioning country. But I'd love to hear from you. Donald Trump announcing this complete and total ceasefire between Israel and Iran despite more missile attacks this morning. What's your reaction to that? Does that show that what Donald Trump did and what Israel did was actually the right thing, bringing, let's face it, Iran to its knees? People talk about this as, these are negotiated things. They're not. At the end of the day, Iran's, lost its entire military air capability, for goodness sake, lost its nuclear capability, certainly for the time being, maybe at least another 10 years. I mean, tick, tick, I say. Thank you, Donald Trump. Thank you, Benjamin Netanyahu. They've made not only people of Israel, people of the Middle East widely, I would say the Iranian people as well, but certainly the Western civilization, they've made it a safer place. Thank you very much. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Get in touch. 0344 499 1000. You can text the word talk in your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs one standard network rate message. I'm also desperate to get your calls on another topic, and I'm just talking about it with Mike before we hand it over. But Revelations, front page of The Sun today, that Channel migrants are working as Deliveroo and Just Eat delivery drivers within hours of arriving in the UK. Look, there's been lots of evidence that, in these asylum hotels, there's a load of Uber Eats and the Deliveroo and what's the other one? Just Eat. All of their bikes with all the logos on, parked outside. And apparently it's just a whole big system. And again, it's organised crime. So you basically sign up. Someone signs up for a load of deliveries. They can sign up and get paid for like 40 or 50 people in one bank account. I mean, clearly, and then that money's distributed. These people can earn up to £1,000 a week. And by the way, all that time, you and I are paying for their accommodation and their food. Although maybe they get the old leftover pizza when someone's not at home, having put in an order. We know this is going on. I've never thought for a moment, people say, these Channel migrants, they're living on, £35 a week or whatever it is. How are they coping? Well, they're not looking too emaciated. We're not talking apparently Gaza levels of starvation, are we? I'm thinking, of course they're working illegally. Part of the draw. One of the reasons why the organised criminals take these people over, cut price rates. You have to pay them back with the money you earn from organised crime. So whether it's a delivery driver, whether it's car washes, whether it's nail bars, whatever it is, we know these people are part of the black economy. Not only does that economy basically it evades tax, it helps organised criminal gangs, fund, their prostitution, their drug running, the gun running, everything, and exploitation of people. But also, of course, absolutely, as always, every single immigration policy, it absolutely damages people on the lowest job level, so the lowest socio-economic scale. Because why would you employ someone who insists on employment rights and minimum wage when you can get some guys just got off a boat? I mean, and this is exploitation on a grand scale that hurts British working class people the most. But don't worry, people ordering their Uber Eats on a Friday night, they get a cheaper delivery.
And that's what the whole business model relies upon.
Yep.
This whole shift towards everything being able to be delivered to your door at not much expense, super convenience and so on. The way they've been able to do that is because of the fact that they've been relying, it's been an open secret that this has been in large part kind of illegal labour. It's one of those things where, in any other time, this is the sort of job that would be done by a teenager, and yet this is something which is now having to be made up because of the fact that they're willing to work for those relatively low wages. I mean, it's something that obviously builds up if you're particularly prolific.
If you're not paying tax,
I know exactly, it makes a big difference.
If you're not paying for your accommodation, it's probably quite a good wage.
And this is particularly shocking because it's one thing if it's they're working in a completely underground part of the economy, if they're working in a completely crooked, barbershop or car wash or what it might be. Yeah. These are huge companies. They're incredibly successful. Everyone knows what's happening. Yeah. Everyone knows that if you allow your riders who have to register to rent out their account, that's just an invitation to abuse. And the fact that it's taken this long for any government, the last government, let alone this one, to actually start talking about this issue. Yeah. They've already started talking about it before this expose in the Sun. It's ridiculous. But there are so many just sort of open secrets where this issue
exactly, and everyone just nudge, but it's all cheap. But again, we know. Again, even like Donald Trump, you talk about immigration, in America and California, a place like that, where something like 10% of workers are from Mexico, from abroad, and are illegal workers. Big business relies on this. Yeah. Big business relies on mass legal and illegal immigration to keep their own price, their own costs down. People say, and therefore prices are lower for us. But we're paying for it everywhere else. We're going to end up paying for it anyway because these people need accommodation and blah, blah, blah. But I mean, this is the thing. There is also a massive safety issue on this story as well, where, when a young woman opens the door, child, I've got friends who'll say, okay, I'm going to be on the phone to my kid while the delivery okay, you can open the door to delivery. I'll tell the delivery driver, leave it outside the door. I'll give the code. I do not want one of these delivery guys to see that a child is, a young girl is opening the door. What? And now you're thinking, what, is a parent at home or not at home? They don't know. That's not safe. We know, by definition, we've already got somebody, if they come into this country illegally, then you're already a criminal. We have to treat you in a suspect way. If you've got a daughter, you have to work on that basis. We are talking about a very big risk to people, particularly young women. I mean,
it's an important point to make that if you allow for particularly a large amount of illegal migration, but any amount of illegal migration, there will be a non-negligible portion of those people who, shall we say, entering the country illegally won't be the only crime they're going to commit, that they're willing to commit that they might have committed previously. And this is one of those things. This is not to. This sounds like a strange thing to say, but this is not even to cast aspersions on all illegal immigrants, which sounds like a strange thing to say, but still...
Oh, no, some of them are great in an illegal sort of way. They're all engineers and astronauts. You were almost
selecting for a higher proportion of people who could be genuinely quite dangerous. We've learnt this through the number of people who've gone on to commit serious sexual offences, violent offences, involved in organised crime and whatever, because of the fact that they're already, by dint of the way that they came here, involved in criminal activity. So it's just common sense, and yet it's become another kind of unsayable.
Another unsayable, exactly. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I can see the phone lines already lighting up on this. Do give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Don't forget, we're all bigoted and xenophobic, and everyone needs to shut up and stop talking about it because it's all about community cohesion.